Previously on the Seventh Valkyrie, Strena makes a daring escape from the haven, seeking the golden light shining in the sky. But as she wanders the edge of the old city, she's reminded why exactly she'd been told to stay home. Find out what happens next on the Seventh Valkyrie. Nothing could be more chaotic, wild, and unpredictable than the cities of the free men. As Strena closed in on the edge of the tree line, where the old city crept closest up the hill and then continued along the mountainside, she began to feel uncertain for the first time since she had set out from the haven. It was one thing to search for that golden light with her senses when she was snuggled up safely in bed. It was entirely another to be a few stone's throws from the cobblestone roads where the hills rose and fell and finally loomed above, beyond view but not beyond second sight. That place that they called the pit. Ugh. Some nights the color rush of the pit could be seen no matter where you were in the old city. It wasn't like that tonight, but the pit still hummed with sensations that made Strena scared and confused and even a little embarrassed for some reason all at once. And she hadn't even begun to synchronize with Guba yet. Biting her lip, Strena took a hop, skip, and jump away from the city, further into the forest, holding Guba tight. Maybe Mama Maven was just right, and that golden light was just another after effect, an image of a manifestation of people coming together. The old city had been stranger than usual today, scarier and more dramatic, and the colors had been blending in ways Strena wouldn't be able to understand. Maybe it was worth ignoring the falling star and just going back home. Strena turned to walk away, but that half turn turned into a full circle, and then a second full circle of half steps and indecision until she stopped, facing the city again. Nisa had told her that she'd need to learn to trust her instincts. Even when she couldn't quite put a finger on why, she had to trust what she felt. And so, with a squeeze to Guba for courage, Strena stepped out to the edge of the forest, settled into the cover of a bluebriar bush with Guba in her lap, and closed her eyes to listen, entering the sensing trance. With Guba's supreme senses, she could see everything, or at least what felt like everything. She could look at people dreaming in their houses, and people sitting in wibbly-wavy hazes, and people walking the streets searching, people celebrating, and from the pit she could feel a bunch that she didn't understand, but she let that all fall away. She wasn't looking for deep reds or earthy greens or the wavy blues. She was searching for that shining star of gold. With each passing moment, she let the other colors fade out as best she could. It wasn't as simple doing so against the chaos of the city, but in time she was able to listen and to look and to seek out the golden star that had lit up the night sky and fallen into the city, only showing flashes here and there. And then suddenly she felt it. The simple shock of her senses brushing up against that golden light startled Strena so much that she tossed Guba overhead and snapped out of her trance. After a giddy little dance and spin, she was overcome with terror that she had lost the golden light permanently. With her heart pounding and Guba returned to her arms, she sat back down to sense, hoping against hope. But even through the haze brought by her worries, she found it again, a little golden star shimmering against the night sky, holding in place somewhere in the pit. It was a low, gentle light, and if it had been any other color besides shimmering gold, she couldn't have spotted it in a year of listening. But it was so different from any color in the city that it was impossible to miss once you detected it. Or at least to Strena it seemed impossible to miss. That golden light felt vaguely familiar, like Strena had seen something like it before, but she couldn't put her finger on exactly what. Settling deeper into her sensing trance, Strena focused all of her being on that gentle, soft gold glow, trying to wrap her head around what it was as she focused all of her and Guba's considerable perception right on that fallen star. What happened next happened slowly, but somehow over that vast distance, Strena began to feel a resonance, not unlike what happened between herself and Guba, one between Wildspeaker and Familiar. Fear might have been a reasonable reaction, but Strena's curiosity and familiarity drew her in. She leaned deeper into that strange, strengthening connection, opening herself up to that golden glow until it seemed like all there was in the night was a shining star in the pit and a green glow on the mountainside. Then, with another one of those unspoken, unlearned instincts, Strena blinked her light on and off. There was a dip and a reaction from the golden glow, but then it remained steady. Strena blinked her light on and off again, and this time the golden glow went completely spastic, fizzling and shifting and fading out for long enough that Strena wondered if she hadn't scared it off. But then the golden glow faded slowly back in, and clumsily blinked back, on and off. There was a strong layer of caution emanating out through their strange bond, a hesitance. So Strena blinked one more time, and then, without knowing how she did it, she sent out a strum, like 2 delicate thumps on a deep bass string instrument. Strena herself was the most surprised at what she'd done. But she didn't have much time to be surprised before the golden glow sent something back. It was a cute little off-key beep. Strena sent back the steady thumping bass line, a steady rhythm along the bond, and eventually that beep joined in. It was off rhythm, too, and frazzled and uncertain, but in time, that little beep started to measure in with the humming bass that Strena laid down. With a smile that she knew was creeping onto her face, Strena began to weave a more complex rhythm, adding an interplay of little divergences, little breaks and pauses and holds, and in time that golden glow began to follow along. It also seemed to be coming alive, gaining some steadiness, and that was when Strena felt like she wanted to get even more playful. With a virtuosity she would have never been able to replicate with any physical instrument, Strena began to send out an unbridled string of musical questions, interactions, and challenges, inviting the golden glow to join into a strange, ethereal dance. And for a few precious moments, that golden glow began to respond. It was tentative at first, but in time it seemed to rejoice and begin dancing and singing along, a meeting of 2 souls separated by rock and stone and distance, and yet intimately, closely linked. But then, all at once, Gooba's sharp claws dug into her leg, and Strena snapped out of the dance into a daze, falling from her seated position to the ground, her head spinning. She was sad, she was confused, she was unsure exactly which limbs were hers, and then she sensed a pack of men, with gifts alight coming towards her. With a gasp, Strena dulled her power and curled up into a ball, trying to make herself as small as she could. She hadn't been paying attention. That song and dance might have been like a beacon to anybody who had the second sight. Out in the night, she heard voices. "Where did she go?" one asked. They seemed concerned, even angry. "Don't tell me you lost her. We'll be killed for something like that." "Can you hear us out there, little girl?" a third called. "We're not going to hurt you. We're just here to help." While the 3 grew closer to her, Strena could sense others fanning out into the forest. She might not have been shining anymore, but she could still very much be seen by the naked eye. And there were firewakers in the group, and as they grew closer, Strena could see them by firelight now, not just under the light of the stars. "Hey, just come on out, girlie," another gruff man cried out. "Aren't you tired of being out in the woods?" Strena breathed deep, drawing on all of the power that she could without letting it escape. The footsteps were closer, and that was more than Strena could handle. With a burst of power, she made the bushes a dozen yards away erupt into grabbing, thrashing vines, and then she sprinted out into the darkness holding Gooba. Her gambit failed as soon as it started, and the men were after her, shouting for her to come back, that they were just there to protect her. The forest behind her went alight with their gifts as they searched after her, but Strena had sensed that there were no wild speakers in their numbers. She might have the advantage out here in the forest. Or so she thought. For all her fleet-footedness, she was still a child, and for every 3 skillful steps she made through the thickening woods, Her pursuers could match them with a single long stride. Ultimately, the same thing that had saved her was her downfall. Guba. The shivering Huna did its absolute best, holding stock still in her arms, but without her arms to help her, Strena slipped on a riverbed and went crashing down on the slippery rocks, curling around Guba to protect him. The men closed in, and with a cry, Strena wrapped even further around Guba, igniting a flare of power around herself as the men arrived at the creek bed. With her heart bounding, she reached deeper, deeper, deeper into her source of power, ready to lash out with anything she could. But then there was a shout, and she couldn't sense the men getting any closer. Eventually, she heard a firm, gentle voice that she recognized.
Strena, we really are here to take you home,
Ravi said, panting with exhaustion.
Your Mama Maven is terrified. Hey, Slakan, bring your gifts down, you're scaring her.
One by one, the waves of power around her faded, leaving only Strena and Ravi's kind words as he knelt next to the riverbed, still a few yards away from her.
Can we take you home, Strena? He said. You don't have to be afraid, I promise you. That is where we are going.
Strena looked back and forth between them, and then in a wave of crushing exhaustion, she let go of her power. The shine of her eyes faded, and they were all left in the clearing, only lit by the light of the moon and the stars as Ravi scooped her up and started to carry her home. Mama Maven was mad when Strena got back. She smacked Strena in the head, and then smacked her again, and then picked her up and kissed her on the cheek and told her never, ever scare her like that again. They had turned the whole haven on its head, thinking something horrible had happened, and had nearly given up hope as they searched the edges of the forest and the city. Strena was so tired that she didn't even react when Maven told her she was grounded until the winter festival, and even longer if she didn't behave perfectly. Instead, Strena simply let herself be carried up to bed, where she melted into the mattress, utterly spent. It would be frustrating to be stuck inside and closely watched by Maven, not allowed to join in the games or the adventures or the evening fun times. But as she closed her eyes, Strena could feel a faint afterimage of that golden glow shining against her second sight. She would be able to find that twinkle in the sky again. Want to know what happens next? Join us on Patreon to become a hero of Edera and get early access to episodes along with bonus features, director's commentary, and the full Tab to archive. You can also find other ways to support us at the links in the description, and we will see you next week.